This is Open Source Tonight for Wednesday, November 20th, 2019. I'm your host, Vincent Maggard, with my co-host, Billy Everso.
How's it going?
Hey, Billy. Had a good week?
It was tiring.
It was tiring. I can relate. Well, congratulations to us for not dying. So now we'll get right into the news this week in open source news. First up, a big thing in open source news. Firefox has a brand new logo, and they've also added a password generator to the browser.
I think that's making it a lot harder to actually use it, because what if you forget that password? You just keep hitting the whatchamacallit button that randomizes it to get a new password?
No, that's not how password generators work. No, I mean, it would store it in a library, so you would be able to go back to it. That's how password generators work, like LastPass. And then there's also like one called KeyXPass. I've used that. That's a one you can use on Linux. So you can use LastPass on Linux too, because it's in a web browser. But I thought this was pretty interesting. It says that Firefox will include, this is according to OMG Ubuntu, a new securely generated password option that works in the HTML password fields. So all the developers out there know what I'm talking about. But yeah, anyway, so that's nice. Always good to increase the security. Other changes include the web window will now be enabled by default on Windows and Intel devices. So that's good. It also includes a new multi-line editor in the web console. As a web developer that sometimes uses Firefox, I'm very happy. Vastly reduced power consumption on Mac OS as well. Web audio API improvements have been added. I don't really use that stuff, but I mean, that's nice. And they also have a new What's New menu. That's kind of a tongue twister.
I do like the new logo. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah,
it's a little pinkish towards the bottom of it.
Yeah, visit opensource.com and click on today's episode, and you can see the show notes, and you can go see the article we're referencing, but it's on omgubuntu.co.uk. But anyway, yeah, so that's pretty cool. So any thoughts on Firefox? Do you use it? Do you like it?
I've used it here and there, but I don't use it in the main thing. I'll use it if I have to, but for me, it's a little complicated out there, but I do like it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Firefox. Really, the biggest thing I have against it, and I know it's a dumb thing, is I just don't like the way the UI looks as much as Chrome. I like material design, and that's Google Chrome's. That's
the thing I don't like about it either.
Yeah. Billy's still learning how to keep a mic where it's supposed to be, everybody. Anyway, but anyway, so yeah, I like Firefox. I just wish that it was prettier. I know you can theme it. Maybe one day I'll use it. I did use it for a little while a couple of years ago, and I mean, it wasn't a bad experience, and Quantum definitely made it better.
I used it when I was in school in our computer class.
I see. I mean, it's not bad. I have to say, though, I still think the developer tools are a little bit better in Chrome. It's my personal opinion, but Firefox is awfully close at this point. I don't really feel like they're that much different. I think that Chrome is a tiny bit better, but at this point they're pretty competitive.
Yeah, I like Chrome better than anything.
Yeah. Chromium, the open source version of it, I use that a lot. It's pretty good. I mean, it works, But anyways, continuing here, we've got Zorin here. And I don't know if you know what Zorin is, Billy. Probably not.
No clue.
Billy is very new to Linux. People, we're bringing him into the community here. Yeah. But I'm
terrible at all computers.
Don't say that to a podcast listened to by people that like computers.
What I mean is I'm terrible at like the programming side of things.
Oh, that's half the audience probably. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of you are programmers. I'm just joking with you.
I'm just new to like understanding like the terms and how to use it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I know how to handle computers pretty well.
Yeah. Well, anyways, but Zorin OS, what this is, it's a Linux distro, and I was actually talking to Billy about this before we went on the air. He said one of the things that he liked about Windows was the fact that he was used to it. And I said, well, you can get a Linux distro that looks a lot like Windows, especially Windows 7. A lot of people have kind of done the styling of Windows 7 in Linux. I guess everybody liked it. I like the way Windows 7 did things myself. I was on it for a long time, till about 2 years ago. I fully moved off it. But anyway, Zorin, you can see here the screenshot, Billy, of Zorin. This is Zorin 15 Lite. Tell me, what do you think about that? Doesn't that look kind of like Windows to you?
A little bit. It's pretty simplistic. I gotta put it to that. It's actually pretty nice the way they organize it and they have it all laid out.
Yeah, again, talking to the mic.
I am. Boy.
He keeps Billy's moving away from the mic, everybody. So this is why
I'm not used to having a mic in my face.
I should have given him a pair of headphones so he would be able to make sure he was on mic. That does help because I notice I'll move off and come back. Anyway, Zorin, I have to say I don't care much for Zorin myself, but it's not really for me. It's for new users. It's for people that I guess want something that looks like Windows. I mean, I don't really want something that looks like Windows, even Windows 7. Windows 7 ain't bad, but I like the way...
It's for those people that are used to Windows, that want to have Windows, but are wanting to try something.
It's for people that want to transition to Linux, that want something they're used to.
Yeah,
because it doesn't run Windows applications per se. I mean, you can run Wine. Wine is not an emulator, is what that stands for, and it can emulate the Windows back end a little bit and make some Windows app work on Linux, especially simpler ones that are kind of older. But I mean, really, it's Linux. It's not Windows. So it looks close to Windows, but don't think of it like Windows. But I think it's actually pretty interesting. But anyways, the reason we bring up this particular distro today, this Linux distro, is because, XFCE quote has never looked so good according to OMG Ubuntu. Yes, we use them for a lot of quotes. And, I have to say, I do like their theming, especially the dark theme. Oh, that is just, look at that dark theme.
That's got me sold, because when it comes to like systems and stuff like that, I like to have like the background dark because I don't like it super bright.
Yeah.
Because it's just too blinding.
I only recently got into dark themes, like maybe 6 months ago or something in that neighborhood. But man, it's one of those things, once you do it, you can't go back. It's so, I mean, it started with YouTube, and I think that was more like a year ago or something at this point, maybe even longer. But I actually switched to a dark theme on my Linux machine. Some of them still has a light theme. I'm not fully dark over here.
It just makes everything more easier on the eyes.
It does. It does. It really does. It also, depending on the monitor, can also save on power usage, which is good if you're paying the power bill. Because, power
and all
bills,
that bright white has to waste a lot of energy.
I mean, like on smartphones that have an OLED display, I can't talk today. Those displays don't use any power when they show black on the screen, like an LCD does. And so that's one advantage to having a black theme on a smartphone that has an OLED display is you're going to save battery. So that's always nice. Yeah. But I mean, I think that this is actually pretty interesting, but this is for, I would argue, for more of a new user that is expecting a Windows-like look. That they want to be able to use Linux, just have something they're familiar with, at least to break them into it. Yeah. I like Linux Mint better for that myself, because I think it's more polished, and I like it. I'm not dogging Zorin. I'm sure it's a good distro. I've used it before. It works. It's just not my cup of tea. But anyways, continuing on here, some of the new changes, or not changes, here's some of the key features in Zorin OS 15 Lite. They're using the Linux kernel 5.0. So that's good to see. They've got Flatpak support enabled by default now. New notifications indicators have been added. Do not disturb mode is in there now. And again, we were just talking about the theming. That's just really great. And according to Zorin's website here, it says that the CPU uses minimal usage requirements is a 700 megahertz single core. Man, that's a low end machine. I wonder how well it would work on that. I don't even have a machine that low power. 512 megs of RAM, 8 gigs of storage, and a minimum display size of standard definition TV resolution of 640 by 480. Goodness sakes almighty, that's nothing. That's nothing. They're gone. You can get a computer from 20 years ago and run that probably.
There you go.
So that's maybe that's what it's for. I'm not giving enough credit here. Anyway, on to stuff that maybe matters to some of us more. If you're more in the Ubuntu family, I mean, that is an Ubuntu-based distro, but more in the stock Ubuntu side of things. Ubuntu 2004. Ubuntu 2004, my apologies. Daily builds are now available to download from their website. And so that's pretty good. And I'm trying to remember what the mascot is supposed to be for this. They got like what looks like a tiger. Is that a tiger in that photo there, Billy?
I do not know. It might be
maybe a leopard.
It don't look like no kind of cat. It looks more like a cat and a weasel mix.
Yeah, I guess it kind of does. I don't know what that is. Anyway, that animal.
We'll look it up later for you, folks.
Yeah, well, I don't know about later.
We'll look up it eventually.
You might tune in next week. We'll talk about it next week,
there
probably.
You go.
Kden Live is now available on the Snap Store for the whole group of humans that care about snaps. Not me. I'm sorry, Snaps, but I don't care. I don't like Snaps.
I don't know nothing about it to even care.
Snaps is an alternative package format, Billy. in Linux. Package formats is how you install applications. I don't like snaps.
I do understand that.
I don't like snaps for a couple reasons. One, they auto update, and I don't really like that. I like having control of my updates. Number two, they don't theme to the OS well sometimes, and that annoys me. So there's just different issues I have with them. I'll grant you the theming issue I notice is better on them lately. I think they've worked that issue out, but it's still frustrating to me. But anyways, if you want to use the Kden Live video editor, it is available in a snap now, and I'm assuming that will probably be a rolling release snap. So as the changes are made to Kden, it will probably be updated, because in the repos, Kden Live, which is a video editor, I'm telling this to Billy, but anyone else that doesn't know, it's a video editor. And the thing about Kden Live is that they don't, it's one of those packages that normally in the repos in an OS like Ubuntu wouldn't get updated except for in between full releases. And that's generally okay, at least for some of us. That's fine for me. I used to edit in Kden Live. I don't anymore. I edit in Olive now, but I don't really have an issue with using an older version. But for those of you that want the latest and greatest for new features or whatever it may be, the snap may be able to get you that. I'm unclear on whether or not that's the case, though. Well, here's what it says. This means that they are updated more frequently and moment
changes are made, so you always get the latest and greatest features and fixes.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you, Billy. But anyway, yeah, that's anyway, but yeah, so that's the story on that. At the end of the day, I think we're going to have to see what people think about this. I don't really care if it's in a snap, but, I could see some people being very excited. And now I'm going to talk about a thing that I think is definitely something a lot of people are mixed on here. And Billy,
I might be interested in it, because I like Microsoft Edge.
Well, oh dears, you're in a Linux podcast, Billy.
Hey.
Don't listen. Don't attack Billy. Okay,
I'm new with this. Okay.
Okay, he has the right to his opinion. I highly disagree, though.
I'm starting to understand Linux, though.
That's great.
Slowly.
That's good. See, we're going to get him on Linux, folks, at some point. Don't worry, it's going to happen.
One of these days.
Yeah, it's official though. Microsoft Edge is coming to Linux because it's official. Microsoft announced the other day at their conference. I forget what conference it was, though, that they would be eventually porting Edge to, I started to say Microsoft Linux, excuse me. They might make
Microsoft bought Linux. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Let's not do that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, let's not do that. Not a fan of Microsoft here, and a lot of people in the community is not a fan.
For you.
Yeah, that would not be funny. Anyways, Microsoft announced it was going to be rebuilding Edge on top of the Chromium-based browser, like it was on the other platforms here, and that obviously increased the likelihood of a Linux native port, because Chromium already works on Linux, obviously, and so that's interesting. But we're gonna have to see what happens. I'm not really that interested in Edge because I don't really want to be in the Microsoft ecosystem. I mean, I got out of that on purpose. But maybe for somebody like you that, wants to move to Linux and you like Edge, it give you something that you can relate to. Again, for me,
it'd be like training steps to get to the actual use of Linux.
Yeah.
Like baby steps.
I mean, if you're using Edge on Linux, you're using Linux. Just
fair enough. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean,
switch from actual Microsoft Windows to Linux.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll say this. One of the things that's made it a lot easier to switch to Linux is the web. And because Edge is based on Chromium, the most popular browser, pretty much any web app is going to work in the new version of Edge on Linux, Windows, etc. So it's going to be really easy for a lot of users that they're using mostly web apps to move. And I can say for somebody like myself that does use both native and web apps, the web apps, I mean, a lot of them are really great. Gmail's a web app. There's a lot of good web apps out there. So
it works perfectly for me because I'm always on the internet.
Exactly. Anyway, I mean, who isn't on the internet most of the time these days?
Fair enough.
Anyways, Elementary OS, another new user Linux distro. And when I picked these stories, I didn't even think about the fact that Billy would be considered a new user. Well, not even really a new user, a user that could be new, I guess is what we would say, because he doesn't use a Linux yet. Elementary OS, another Linux distro, has added support for Flatpaks, which is another thing Vincent doesn't care about. I'm an old grumpy geek. I just want my apt, my yum images. Not images.
You're the old man who lives down the street that wants the kids off his lawn.
I don't know if I'd say that, but I like. Here's the thing: when it works, don't break it. Look, the apt repos in Debian and Ubuntu and Elementary OS and all these different places, they work fine. I don't see why we need to develop 10 ways to do the same thing. We've already got 10,000 ways to package stuff on Linux. Let's not add 5 more. We don't need that many.
If it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Exactly. And it just adds to the fragmentation of Linux, and it makes it harder for developers to know what to package in. It's like that's really, in my opinion, one of the biggest things that I think is really against Linux's favor for getting higher in the desktop market. Is our packaging is all over the place. You go on Debian and you want to build an app, you have to package it differently than if you want to do it on Ubuntu. And I know Snaps and Flatpaks are trying to fix that, but it just, to me, they cause more problems than they fix, especially Snaps. But I do like app images, even though they don't always work with the theming either. But the reason I like app images is because they don't update. You actually have control. You download that, and that's a static image, which is really good if you're getting your work done on something and you just want to know, I'm on version 1.5.2 or whatever it is, and you don't need to think about, is this going to work in 5 years? For me, because if they keep updating, it could cause problems, right? You don't want to just have a sudden update on you that could cause issues. But it's interesting that they added support for this. Obviously, it could be useful to some users. There may be some apps out there, I'm really not aware of any, that are Flatpak only, but if they are, you could now install them. Now, a story that really matters to me, because I use Electron-based apps like Discord, proper Linux screen sharing is going to come to Chromium and Electron apps like Discord in the near future. There was an issue with the Chromium browser, which Electron is based on, and that issue was the screen enumeration was not being done properly on Linux, and so they've pushed a patch to fix this, and it is currently pending to merge upstream as of the end of October. I'd like to see if that's actually available now. This is a little bit older news, so that would be really great to see. But I would like to see this be available. Someone that uses multiple monitors on Linux, it would be really great if I could actually do more than just select display the full contents on one monitor, right? Actually, I can't even do that, can I? That's Skype you can do that with, isn't it? No, on Discord, I'm pretty sure you can't do that. Anyway, that's me talking to myself there. But, I mean, it would be really nice when you can actually, properly screen cap Windows and stuff like you can on other platforms, because that's a really great thing to be able to do, so people can, get focused on what you're trying to show them, whatever it may be. So I think that's really good. So yeah, Billy, any thoughts on this?
I don't really know what use I'd use it for, because I don't use Discord.
Okay. Well, basically, better screen sharing is coming to the Chromium open source browser and to Linux.
Yeah. I got that much, but I don't see myself using it. I can see probably other people have uses for it.
I mean, it depends. It depends. I mean, I don't always use stuff that's like Electron based, so it does depend. But the thing is, and the thing I find interesting is Skype is an Electron app now, and it actually, as far as I know, you can already screen share 2 monitors, but you can't do that in Discord if I remember right. And so, I wonder if that will fix that problem in Discord at the same time. I'm not really sure what Skype did to get around it. Maybe they pushed this patch in themselves into Electron. Who knows, cool. for their Electron build. But regardless, I think it's going to be very interesting, especially for Electron developers, which I do build Electron stuff sometimes. Not necessarily the biggest fan here. And now the story that I think is going to either tick everybody off or moderately make everyone mad. I just said this. Or
there could be the general part of the audience that does get mad, but still like it. Still just go meh.
Okay.
Hey, that's just my opinion.
Anyway, so OMG Ubuntu again. We source a lot of OMG Ubuntus.
Where you get all your news from?
I know. Anyway, so happily never after, the title goes, Disney Plus does not support Linux, but it could. And this is very true. They use the DRM system that they use on Disney Plus could be downgraded. There's a way you can downgrade it, like Netflix and Amazon and others have, and Prime and Hulu and stuff like that, to be able to actually support Linux systems, but they've chosen not to because they're paranoid. You can still copy the video off a Windows machine, Disney. Like, seriously, if you're worried about people stealing your content, how about you just don't publish it? That's a perfect strategy.
I know I've seen somewhere on the news lately that they've actually had some of their accounts stolen.
Yeah, I heard about that too. I haven't had a chance to look up the news, so I don't think we'll cover that too much unless you have some information here. But
that's about as much as the information I have on it.
Anyway, but yeah, so supposedly that happened as well, that some Disney Plus accounts was hacked into. Disney, the last time I heard, acted like that that this was people using bad passwords, but then there was people supposedly saying, no, I used a strong random password and I still got in. I don't know. Who knows what it was, but, it's going to be kind of hard to say from afar. But the thing is, I think it's very frustrating, that Linux is not currently got Disney Plus support. But I look at the list of things it doesn't have Disney Plus support, and I think the list should be shorter for the non-supported list. For one thing, they do not support Chromebooks, which, I mean, hello, those things are the number one selling computers practically, if I remember right. Yeah. I can't remember if that was in education or in general these days, but either way, there's a lot of them in the world, so you would probably want your service to work on them.
I have a Chromebook, but I don't use it anymore.
Yeah. Also, fun little fact, Billy, Chromebooks, did you know this? Use Linux.
Well, I never knew that.
Exactly.
So I guess I did use Linux.
Yep. Android also uses Linux too, Billy. You've used Linux before somewhere. Most of the web also runs on Linux.
I still have my Chromebook at home, but it's messed up.
I see.
Like the actual hardware.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's based on Gen 2 Linux. But yeah, the Chromebooks are interesting. But back to Disney Plus, because I got off topic. I would like to see Disney Plus actually work on Linux. I think it would be really good. I actually wanted to try the service, so I got an account, and I went and actually started up a Windows 7 VM in VirtualBox just to see what it was like. And it wasn't bad. The UI looked good. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Netflix, but, not maybe an exact clone, but kind of similar for the UI. The video streaming worked. I actually tried it on at the end of day one, and people were complaining that it wasn't streaming for them, but me and my mother was able to watch Dumbo, the movie, the live action version, that is.
I've never seen it. Is it any good?
It's very good. It's very good.
I wanted to see it.
Yeah, you should totally watch it. It's a beautiful movie. You might make you cry, though. It's just kind of sad at some parts.
Speaking of Disney news, they're making a Lady and the Tramp live action.
That's nice. Anyhow.
That's one of my favorite movies.
Anyway, well, that's good. Anywho, but back to the Linux news here. So Disney Plus currently doesn't support Linux, obviously, and if you try to use it, you're getting the Error 83 code from the application, and it's stupid. Anyway, so the hope is that Disney will change, and actually support Linux like other platforms like Netflix have, because at one point Netflix, if we remember, didn't support Linux. It was a while back, but it did happen. And so we'll see. Maybe they'll warm up to the Linux world. I mean, why don't they support Chromebooks either? Anyhow, but anyways, the Disney Plus, it's great. If you can get it to work. At least in my opinion. Again, it depends. Like, I like the Pixar movies, and, some of the Star Wars stuff's pretty good. So for me, it's interesting. I don't know if I'd actually pay for it, though. I'm just going to try it for a month. Really more just for the curiosity. But like I said, I watched a movie on it. It worked. If you did it in Windows, that is. So hopefully they'll add Linux support. Now, the thing I'll say about the Linux support is their website, if you look at the non-supported list, everything on the unsupported list is worded differently, excluding Linux. And the way that they worded Linux, I thought was very interesting, because everything else just said not supported, right? But Linux said not supported at this time. So that makes me think maybe they are going to support it in the future.
Probably. It sounds like they're wanting to get to it, but they haven't got to it yet.
Yeah. Also, put your mic closer, Billy. Seriously.
I thought it was too close.
Billy, in radio, you're supposed to talk into the mic. That's literally how radio works. And
I thought it was too close to me. This is the first time I've done this.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. My apologies for Billy being a little too distant from the mic at times.
I'm new at this.
He is, exactly. I was about to say, he is new at this, so my apologies. But anyway, so Disney Plus, would you get a subscription to Disney Plus? What do you think about it?
I would.
You would?
Yeah, all for Star Wars.
You want to see Star Wars?
Hey, they got a new Star Wars on there called The Mandalorian. It shows a baby Yoda.
Okay.
Not the Yoda, but of the same species of alien Yoda.
Oh, okay, I got you.
But it shows it as a baby.
Makes sense.
And it looks like the funniest looking thing you've ever seen.
Well, I mean, I guess that's one reason to go get Disney Plus. You want to see that. The thing that I find really interesting is the bundle of Hulu and Disney Plus and ESPN. I don't care about ESPN, but Hulu is really great. And you can get a deal on all three bundled. Yeah. And so you don't have to say, maybe we have Hulu, maybe we'll bundle it. I don't know. I mean, there is a couple good Pixar movies and stuff out there. And, you got Star Wars. Disney Plus isn't, completely useless.
So if you ever want to backtrack to some of the older movies that you used to Disney,
well, that's one thing I definitely want to do with it, is go back and look at the older movies I used to watch, like the older Pixar movies and stuff from when I grew up. Yeah. So that's always good. But yeah,
nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly. Have a little dose of nostalgia. But the thing is, at this point, they don't support Linux, but I am hopeful that they will at some point. But we'll have to see and just wait around for it. You never know whether they'll actually do it or not, but we'll see. I said on principle originally I didn't really want to get it because I didn't support Linux, but I was just so curious. Curious I got the better of me, and I went and tried it.
You know what they say? Curiosity
killed the cat.
Jinx.
Yep. Curiosity killed the cat. Exactly. But yeah, so that ends our news for the day. And now we're going to go into our topic for today's episode, which is, of course, a cool open source Linuxy thing, as usual. And that is the Raspberry Pi 4, which I picked up recently. And Billy and me in the studio here looking at it, and I'm drooling, and Billy's probably wanting to drool over it.
I don't understand it, but it looks awesome, though.
It looks awesome. There you go. Well,
I do like electronics, but I'm just not used to. I haven't worked with electronics.
So these pins right here, the GPIO pins, the general purpose input-output pins, you can use to control motors and lights and whatever you want.
There's a program that hooks up to other things that you have to have it run.
Yeah, so like for example, you could write a program to run at a certain time on like a cron task, and then like make a motor run for 5 minutes or something. Maybe like to do like a sprinkler system. I actually seen a video a few years ago where a guy actually made a sprinkler system controller out of one of these Pis, so it could turn on and it could check the weather. He actually had it set up in a weather API, and it would go in and look at the weather forecast and see if it was going to rain for a few days, and if it was, it would not water them because then the grass would die because of too much water, right? But if it looked at the forecast and it was going to be dry for like the week or most of it, it'd be like, we go ahead and do some watering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought that was like really interesting.
Yeah. They could be also used for like robotics as well.
That's true.
I watched one video of a guy, he makes like costumes and stuff out of 3D printing, and for some of the controls in it, they use motors, and he uses the Raspberry Pis, Arduino to run it.
And the Raspberry Pi, there's a YouTuber explaining computers. I'll give a shout out to all my favorite YouTubers before the show's over, probably. But
we'll have the shout out to them.
Yeah, but Explaining Computers, great YouTube channel, explainingcomputers.com. Not sponsored, but if they want to,
contact Vincent.
Yes, exactly. Contact me if you want to sponsor. But anyway, the Raspberry Pi 4 is really cool. But the guy from Explaining Computers, that fellow actually did a robot a few years ago with the Raspberry Pi Zero W and did a wirelessly controlled over the network robot, and I thought that was pretty cool. So go check out that video if you wanted to see a Raspberry Pi controlled robot. He does a very good video over it. It also probably helps that he programmed it with Python, a language that I like. So that probably made me like it a little bit.
I'll probably have to give Vincent here to show me later.
Yeah, exactly. I'll show you after the show, Billy.
There you go.
Yeah. But anyways, the Pi 4 is really cool. Just for those that don't know, it's got 2 HDMI ports that can support up to 4K 30 frames a second video output. Man, that right there alone makes you want to drool.
Oh, God.
This isn't a computer that's less money than it costs to buy, like the microphone I'm talking into costs more money than this Pi. Let's put it that way. So, and
what is that specific board that you're holding in your hand used for?
This board, this is the beauty of a Raspberry Pi. It's multi-purpose. It can be used for pretty much anything that the developer can think of. So
as long as you got like the things on it that you need, you could basically turn this into an actual like working computer.
I mean, it is a working computer. You can
you
plug.
know what I mean by like actual like desktop.
I mean, you can use this as a desktop. People have tried. You can plug in, a keyboard and mouse here on the USB port. It's got USB 2.0 and 3.0. It's got gigabit Ethernet for the wired network, and it's got wireless on it too, so you can connect to the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth.
Very cool.
All built in.
All you'll need to be like your storage and stuff like that.
Yeah, and your storage on these, you can use an SD card, a micro SD card, right there in the slot there, and you take that and you plug that in, you put Raspbian or another Linux distro on it, and once you do that, you can boot it up and you can use it as a computer. I mean, I would argue it's not really quite there yet, based on some of the things I've seen online. It's getting there. Maybe the Raspberry Pi 5 will be ready to treat it as a real computer. Maybe the 6.
I'm sure if you hooked up like other Raspberry Pis to it, you could get to that point.
You can cluster Raspberry Pis together for certain tasks, and that it would be interesting to cluster a few of these together and see what you could get out of of them.
Cluster them together, put it in a small box, and there you go. You got yourself a desktop.
Exactly. But these are pretty interesting. I wouldn't really use it as a desktop, but I use these for like little servers and stuff like that because they're so low power and so cheap. You can buy a bunch of these. Yeah, they're not powerful enough to do like 70 things at once probably, but you could do that one thing on one Pi and have a dedicated box for that task, right? So like
they ain't taking up all the power and stuff like that, so it's simple to use.
Yeah, I mean the thing about it is these Raspberry Pis, they use so little power, you can have a lot of these, I mean a full server, like a regular server, takes a lot of power. I should know, I actually own an HP ProLite server that I used to run a bunch of stuff on, and now I just run it on a few Pis, and the power bill's cheaper, because of course it is. Try running a big server with multiple fans and heat sinks, and this thing's a beast, sounds like a jet engine taking off when it turns on, or a Raspberry Pi that's basically silent operation, which actually, I mean, unless you have a fan on it, they are silent.
That's like if you get yourself a big box, you can fit probably about like a few hundred of those in.
I mean, they make rack mount kits where you can like rack mount a bunch of these in like, like a server rack. So, I mean, you could totally put a lot of these in a small space. A Raspberry Pi is about the size, the regular size one is about the size of a credit card. So
it's a little larger, but it's about the same size.
Yeah, just a little bit bigger. But the thing is, these are pretty interesting, especially for server stuff now, because with the gigabit Ethernet, these really are powerful for access over the network.
Yeah.
I've run Asterisk on these before. You can run a small phone system off of one of these. In fact, my home phone system runs off of an older Raspberry Pi. I think it was like one of the first generation ones, actually. It's getting kind of old. Probably should replace it, but still works for now.
Project.
Yeah.
One of these days.
Yeah, a project. Maybe we'll do an episode about it, but
switch over your phone system.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so the thing is, you can run Asterisk on these. You can do all kinds of stuff. I run a distro that is called a Raz PBX, and it actually pre-installs Asterisk and Free PBX for the control user interface on it, and it's wonderful. I like Free PBX; it's perfect. So it's very capable. And as a programmer, I know how to program Asterisk, so I can go in there and add any custom functionality I want. It's great. Anyway, not a plug for Asterisk, but it's great software. Asterisk.org if you want to check it out. I'm just plugging everything I like today.
Plugging all the lights.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a camera connector on this, so you can actually get one of the Raspberry Pi cameras. I've seen people turn these into surveillance cameras. I'd actually like to try that.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
You can have it connect to the internet, or with Wi-Fi, you can have it connect to the internet with Wi-Fi and stuff like that, so you can be somewhere else and have that be basically your security.
Exactly. And I mean, that's something I would like. I'm not one of these people that's like wanting to put everything in the cloud,
Yeah,
I would much rather take control of my destiny and actually run my servers myself.
There's too much danger there. There's too much danger of being hacked and all that.
I mean, you can be hacked either way, but I just like having the control.
Yeah, but there's like more of a chance to be hacked if it's like uploaded to like the cloud or something.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If you're managing it, I don't really think it's that much of a difference of a danger, but like, if you have some company managing it, I don't really like the idea of giving a company a lot of my data.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Especially surveillance camera data, because then they can see every time I leave the house, every time I come to the house, every time I come to my studio. It's like, no, I don't really want some big company to have access to that. Yeah, it just seems a little creepy.
Yeah, doing it in-house for yourself.
Exactly.
Saves you that security.
Plus, trying to stream HD video in real time on my internet would be basically impossible anyways out to the internet. So that's another good reason not to. If I was going to do it, I would probably just have it do screenshots and just send me it when it's like motion, so I don't have to be like, motion sending continuous HD video out to some server, right? If I was going to do it,
have it to worry if you make your own app or something like that, and if you connect to it, automatically.
Or it would only stream the video like you're talking about when you connect, right? It would just be sent a signal. Hey, he wants to see the video. Okay, now I'll send it, and then I stop. It'll turn it off.
Have it record, but still be hooked with Wi-Fi when you use the app that you make for it, and it cuts it on. It automatically sends to you instead of being constantly broadcasted.
Exactly. The other thing too is you can do this via wire drop, and I'm not a fan of Wi-Fi, so I would probably do a gigabit drop to one of these, from a network switch. But you could do it wirelessly in theory, and that might make more sense for surveillance depending on where you put it. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely places on the property here. The property that I live on is about 1 acre in size, and so I mean, if you wanted to put one on the far side of the property, I don't want to have to run a network drop all the way that far out. We'd probably just do the Wi-Fi for that. That's
as long as you got like stations to be able to boost the Wi-Fi if your Wi-Fi won't reach that far.
Yeah, I mean, generally, if you're using enterprise gear and you are doing it correctly, you can, pass the signal from one to the other, not really boosting it. That's not necessarily the same thing, but like you said, being able to get the signal out there.
Yeah.
I'm not using enterprise gear for my Wi-Fi because I don't care about my Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi is neglected, okay? I just don't care. I really, the only stuff that the Wi-Fi is used for is like a Roku box and like one laptop or two. It's like, that's it.
At least it works a lot better than my Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi is like trying to push a car with square wheels.
It's not going to work, is it?
I mean, it will, but you'd just be going very slowly.
Yeah. One of these days I'm going to have to go over to his house and try and help him get his Wi-Fi back or not back, but where it needs to be. Because it sounds to me like the Wi-Fi is definitely not where it could be. Wi-Fi can have problems, but the problems he's having is like
our
out
internet
there.
Provider.
You have the same provider we do.
Yeah. Well, we haven't been in the area where they have like the new lines up.
Oh, you're in the area of town where the internet sucks.
Yes, we're not in the part where they upgraded the lines.
Oh, goodness.
They haven't reached us yet.
Oh, dears. And I thought we were.
Yeah. Although we do have the option to be upgraded for our Wi-Fi for a few dollars more on a bill. But we haven't decided on doing that yet.
Yeah, you're saying Wi-Fi, but I don't. Maybe are you talking when you're saying upgrade? Are they giving you better equipment, or are they giving you better service?
I think it's better service.
Yeah, that would be a service upgrade. So yeah, it sounds like you can get. They probably have the bonded DSL, digital subscriber line service, available to you now. This is all stuff talking about internet service stuff here. I'm a telecom geek, so I can talk about this all day.
How did we go from talking about Raspberry Pi to this?
This podcast is all over the place. For those that have not figured it out yet, yeah, that's how.
Why don't we just make this just like the first episode just be like something just random stuff?
The random episode, episode
so we
1.
Get used to being on radio. Well, you're used to it. I'm not.
Yeah, we're recording this and airing it on the radio while also producing a podcast for those listening after the fact.
Yeah.
You can listen to our show live every week, by the way, at easternkyradio.com. Click on the Listen Live button. Anyway, or the Listen Now button, I think is what it actually says. But anyway, yeah, so the Pis are very useful. We should probably get back on that. They're very powerful devices. You can use them for a lot of different things. Again, they run Linux. Our playout server, which plays the music on the station, is actually a Raspberry Pi 3B+. Yeah,
cool.
So yeah, when you're listening to the music, you're actually listening to a Raspberry Pi. I would advise you not to use the built-in sound on one of those, though. I find it has a lot of issues. So I actually am using a separate USB sound card into the device, and then that's what actually is outputting the audio into the system that actually eventually transmits. So. Cool. Again, that's what I would say, but you don't have to do that. But yeah, this is, it's an interesting device. I'm very interested to see what they do with the future iterations. I do want to do some YouTube videos on this in the future, and also check us out on our YouTube channel. We are going to be posting videos of different things, behind the scenes stuff, little short segments that didn't make sense to do into an hour, things like that, right? So you can check us out as well.
And stuff.
Yeah, well, that, and then also just little segments like, oh, here's how you would do this and that, something like that. Yeah. Something that needs to be visual and something that is short, right? Something like that will probably end up being on the YouTube channel. But yeah, do check us out, opensourcetonight.com for the website, and from there you can find our YouTube channel if you go there. Our website's still, our new website's currently still in the works, so, there's just a splash page, but you can get to our YouTube channel from that page right now. And Billy, so any thoughts here? We're getting close to the end of the hour. Any thoughts that you have about open source Linux? Any questions for the community?
I'm wanting to learn how to use it a try.
I'm assuming you mean Linux.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
What Linux distro? The open source community is bigger than Linux. It's just kind of the big thing. What is something that you would like to ask me about Linux-wise? What is something that you could talk about Linux-related that you would like to have questions answered on? Any burning questions that you got?
Is it able to support gaming?
Depending on the game, yes. And gaming support on Linux, depending on the game, can be really good. And from what I've heard, some games you actually get better frame rate and better refresh than on Linux than you can under Windows. So,
what kind of examples is there?
Honestly, I don't really remember what the games was that was doing better. But check out like Linus Tech Tips. They did a video over gaming on Linux. It's a very informative video for those out there that want to learn about doing gaming on Linux. I am not the expert. All I really know is that download Steam and you can play a lot of games, and it kind of takes the guesswork out of it for the most part.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is they seem to really say go for Pop! OS for gaming, because it makes installing Steam and using the latest graphics drivers and stuff really easy to get the best performance.
Yeah.
So I would say for a gamer, just based on their knowing about it, and I don't experience, probably Pop! OS is good.
Here's another question for you. Does having Linux on your computer or stuff like that help with any kind of memory stuff that Windows would? I mean, so updates and stuff.
One thing that's really important about Linux is it's not Windows, and I say that lots of people. Yeah. But the reason I say that is because they're very different platforms. I feel like comparing them is an injustice, honestly. But the thing is, the updating on Windows, especially Windows 10, is extraordinarily different from Linux. Because here's the thing about Linux. In Linux, you actually have control over your computer. It's a concept that Windows users don't seem to understand because they've not really been able to relate, especially with Windows 10. But my system, for example, I can say, don't update until I'm ready. Yeah. I can wait 2 years before I run an update. You shouldn't do that for security. But I'm just saying, if you are in the middle of working, I don't have to worry on Linux about it rebooting in the middle of me editing a show or recording something, because it's not going to do that, right?
Well, I've always had difficulty updating my computer where I run Windows 10, but I have lots of memory and stuff for it to update and stuff like that, but it just doesn't update. I know most of it's my internet problem, but the other problem is memory.
Well, the issue that you're having, sounds to me like there's not enough room on the hard drive. When you say memory, I'm assuming that's what you mean, not RAM memory. And
to update it.
Yeah. Linux updates, some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller than Windows updates. So, it depends really on the particular distro that you're using. That's one of the other things about Linux too, is there is so many Linux distros out there, you can tailor the experience to your use, right? So what works for me may not work for you, but the beautiful thing about Linux is, unlike Windows, you got Windows 10. That's it, right? That's that's pretty much that's your only choice. But when it comes down to Linux, you have complete choice. I can decide exactly what UI I want. I can decide exactly how frequently I want to change to the latest and greatest. Yeah. These are all decisions that I can have. And as a developer, you can customize the OS to your liking. If you're a software developer and have the skills, you can build a Linux distro if you really want to from scratch. You don't have to take anybody's mold if you want to make your own. Yeah. I will grant you that it's definitely a lot of work, and I don't want to go through that. But I'm just saying, if you are a developer and want a very customized experience, you can. For somebody like you, there's a lot of off-the-shelf experiences that I think you would find to your liking. Yeah. And, that's the beautiful thing about Linux, because anybody can make a Linux distro out there. The beautiful thing about open source is it does allow for the community to, build as much as the building as they want to build.
Yeah.
And for different uses, right? There's Linux distros for software development specifically, that's kind of aimed towards, let's make it easier on software developers. Like, for example, you want the latest and greatest libraries and stuff to do software development. Fedora from Red Hat is just one of the best ways to do it, because they're keeping up to date. It's very bleeding edge. You will literally get cut if you use the OS probably. Yeah. But if you need to be able to develop with the latest and greatest standards and specs and things that are changing on a daily basis, especially for Linux, it's perfect for that. For me, I'm more of I want it to work and be stable kind of person. So for me, Ubuntu, they don't keep the latest and greatest on the machine, but they keep the security up. They make sure it works. But the thing is, that's what they're going after. They're going after the consumer like me and the business user that wants something that's going to work. They don't care if it has the latest LibreOffice. They don't care if it has the latest X. What they care about is that I'm not going to have to worry about security issues. I'm not going to have to worry about my machine crashing in the middle of something, a critical operation like recording a show, right? So for somebody like me, I think that Linux, especially Ubuntu, is a good place to be. But there's other distros out there that are really good. Red Hat Enterprise Linux and CentOS is very stable. If you're going for something like that, I would argue that that's a little too stable for my taste. It's like I want to use something that's slightly recent. But
one of these days, I need to get you to change my operating system on my
computer. Exactly. One of these days, we need to move you.
As long as I can get on YouTube, browse the internet, and watch Netflix and read my stories, I'm happy.
Well, you can do that on Linux just fine. You can get Google Chrome on Linux. You can get Chromium on Linux. Like you said, you like Chrome. So if your main browser is Chrome and your main thing is to use the browser and use in-browser applications, which a lot of people, that's their main thing, you're going to be fine on Linux pretty much. You just have to keep the system up to date and know how to open that browser. And at that point, Chrome on Linux and Chrome on Windows is the same experience. I mean, it looks the same. It works the same. Everything's the same. So once you get used to what Linux is, if you're just using browser-based stuff, I mean, really, it's not going to be that much of a difference anyway.
So, are we doing the outro now, or do we still how much time we got?
Not quite yet. We got a few more minutes here, Billy.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
What do you want to cover now?
Well, I wanted to kind of keep going on with these questions. It's kind of interesting for you to be able to pick my brain, I think, for the audience, especially for the newer user listening.
Okay, yeah. What kind of file types do Linux support?
Okay, so
does it support zip, stuff like that?
Yeah, it does. Linux has native support for zip in most distros. So, like, for example, in Ubuntu, I don't have to do really from the command line. You have to install a tool to unzip. But if you're doing it from the GUI, I think they pre-ship a tool that will unzip zip files and make zips, and it works really good. Especially with like the stock Ubuntu. I really don't have any issues making zips, sending them to other users, including for zip files that are used on Windows machines or Macs, because I have friends that are not using Linux. Unfortunately, not all of them. We'll convert them someday, folks, I hope, but right now they're not using the same platform.
I like to download like comics and stuff, and they use a different type of like file type. And
Linux's file type support is pretty good. I don't really know about that particular format because I'm not a comic book person.
It's like CBR.CBR.
I don't know if that will be supported or not in Linux, but we can Google it. But Linux does have pretty good file format support. Most video formats are supported under Linux, but not all. It depends on the editor, and a lot of if your editor, for example, like Olive is using like FFmpeg for its backend, it supports pretty much everything. I think if I remember it, Olive can support like ProRes, which is like a professional format, and it can support the consumer formats like ASAT264 and MP4 and places like that. MP4 is actually not a format; it's a codec, but or MP4 is a format, not a codec. But
and if Linux can't support CBR files, would it be able to support apps to run it?
I mean, that's the thing. Like comic book viewers for Linux. Okay, so that's a good sign.
That's what I was wondering just now.
Yeah, it looks like that is probably going to be possible for you there, so that's good.
Yeah, I can catch up on my comics.
I did not even know this was a thing. I mean, like, really, I figured you just like viewed them on the internet, like in a web page, but no, apparently you can download them.
Well, there are sites like that, but there are other sites where you can actually download comics,
like for offline viewing or something.
Yes.
That could be interesting.
That's the reason why I go to one.
See, I'm not much of a comic book user, so this doesn't really. This is uneducated for me. But like when I go on trips and stuff, I'll download podcasts offline to listen to. I guess this is like the equivalent for you, right?
Yes.
This is your podcast. When you're on a trip, you download a bunch of comic books into your computer and you read them.
If I can't get my stories, I'll download comics into my computer.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great idea. So I have to say, Billy, I mean that's actually an interesting idea. I don't care for comic books.
Now to want to switch to Linux. As long as it has that.
Yeah, well, there you go. See, folks, it looks like we got Billy to switch to Linux. I think that's the episode's title. Raspberry Pi 4 and Billy switching to Linux soon.
As long as I can read my comics, read my stories, watch YouTube, and get on Netflix, I'm happy.
Yep, and Netflix also does work on Linux, so congratulations to you.
I'm happy for it.
Yeah. The only thing that doesn't work on Linux that does media, as far as I know right now, is Disney Plus. So if you don't care about that, you'll be fine.
Disney.
But yeah, anyways, so Disney Plus, everybody, you need to support Linux, but
I need to check that out for myself.
But Netflix works on Linux, Hulu works on Linux. Most stuff works on Linux pretty good. So that's really great. I'm very happy to see. I think you can use YouTube TV on Linux if you want to watch live TV on Linux. I mean, there's different ways to watch live TV on Linux, but for me, I'm more interested in the on-demand, like Netflix and Hulu and YouTube. So I mean, I spend a lot of my time on YouTube. We can relate on that. I definitely like to have my YouTube close by. Trust me, if YouTube did not work on Linux, you would be amazed how fast I would stop using it, because that right there is kind of my main. Like, other than writing code, that's like my main thing is watching YouTube videos every day.
You'd have yourself a fake button, a red button covered.
I would basically have two machines. I'd have a Linux machine for everything that wasn't YouTube, and I'd have a YouTube machine just for. I would build. This is how much I like YouTube. I would build a dedicated machine to run Windows or Mac that or BSD YouTube. Or something that would run YouTube. It just to watch YouTube. Yeah, or I'd just get like a Roku box because I can watch YouTube. Right. I would do something to watch YouTube. I'd probably just get a Roku box.
If Linux stopped YouTube, what you need to do is get yourself one of those red buttons programmed. When you push it, it just deletes Linux and uploads Windows again.
No, you could all. You know what you
Or
could.
switches over to another.
I mean, you could have a Windows VM. There's a lot of ways to do this. Besides, YouTube is a web app, and web apps, you pretty much have to actively try to make Linux support not happen, because the web is very well supported on Linux. I mean, the web is very heavily Linux based, so you pretty much have to actively write things. You pretty much have to actively write things to not support Linux. I mean, like, for example, the reason Disney Plus doesn't support this is because their DRM system that they're using does support Linux, but there's a level in it that you can set that you have to require that will exclude Linux. And that's what they've done, is they've said we require this level or higher, and because Linux does not meet that level, it won't work. That's literally what they've done. It's a setting. They could change it in a few minutes, and everybody could use Disney Plus on Linux. Wow. So this is a very petty decision in my mind. Is, you know, they're like, we're not going to let Linux be supported. Maybe they didn't really do it for that reason, but that's in my opinion the reason they did this. But, you know, it sounds like you're at least going to move to Linux, so that's one more user we can tell Disney they should, you know, be supporting Linux for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what Linux distro do you think you would use? Would you like to use Ubuntu, where it's got like a dock on the side? Or would you rather have something that's more of a Windows style, like Linux Mint? Like,
probably more of a Windows style.
So you're a Linux Mint user probably then.
Yeah. Something that at least has something visual that I'm used to.
Exactly.
Well,
Linux Mint has something that looks like a start menu. So if you're familiar with a start menu, you know, that's something you can open up and be like, oh, okay, I see how to open my applications here. It's got a taskbar on the bottom. I can see where to minimize my apps too, and stuff like that. So I think for you, it's got a desktop. You can put icons on it. For you, Linux Mint is probably the best. Maybe the other thing might be a Zorin, because it does kind of look like Windows 2. So if you want that Windows style to, you know, have something to, you know, use that you're already familiar with. But I think Linux Mint is probably the best for you. For one reason, I support Linux. You know, I Linux Mint because I've used it and I like it. So for me, Linux Mint is something I would legitimately be okay with, like assisting tech support with you on. I don't really care for Zorin, so I'd be like, I'm a little bit of a fish out of water here. I don't know how to do this on Zorin, but you ask me to do it on Linux Mint. I'm like, oh yeah, I know how to use Linux Mint. I mean, they're all based on Ubuntu, both Linux Mint and Zorin. So I'm sure under the hood they're close enough. I could probably figure my way around if you really insisted on. I think we should use Zorin on my laptop, but you know,
I'd probably be lost, but I'll learn.
Exactly. But anyways, folks, we're coming to the end of our show. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to the very first episode. You can find us where podcasts are available. I started to say where codcasts are available, like a codfish. I don't know where that came from.
Is that cast made specifically for codfish?
I don't know. That's the thing now, maybe. But anyway.
Did they break their spines?
What?
The cod, the only big bone that they could probably possibly break that needs a cast would be the spine.
No, I thought you meant like a podcast for codfish. You were talking about like a cast. Okay.
Yeah.
This podcast has gone off the rails, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you very much for listening, everybody, regardless of who you are or where you're from. It's very much appreciated that you tuned into today's episode, wherever the podcast was you're listening at, and really greatly appreciate it. Again, you know, check us out during the week on our YouTube channel, which you can find the links to at not OST.com. We should get that. OpenSourceTonight.com. Check us out there. You can find our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find show notes in the future there as well. And don't forget, when you go check out our YouTube channel, you can find behind the scenes things. We're going to do these little tips periodically. So you can go on there and see our tips on how to use Linux and other open source projects. And, you know, that way, if you're getting into this stuff, it's always good to have a little bit of help. And even for us old timers that have been using Linux since we were 13, that would be me. I wasn't using it full time since I was 13, but I've been running servers running Linux since I was about 13. So even for us, it's still good to have the tutorial on YouTube, because sometimes we forget how to do stuff. Sometimes we're learning something new that didn't exist when we were 13, and we need some information, right, Billy?
Tutorials always help.
Tutorials are great. Yeah, exactly. So again, if you want to watch our tutorials, check out the YouTube channel. But anyways, until next week, I'm Vincent, and this is Billy. All right, Billy, where can they find you online?
You can find me on Facebook. That's about it.
Okay. You can find me at VincentMagger.com.
I'm mostly on Facebook.
Okay. You can find me at VincentMagger.com, and you can find me at YouTube.com/VincentMagger. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This is Vincent and Billy signing off for Open Source Tonight, Episode 1.